and I hope you're keeping safe. So in this session we're going to apply what we've learned using the shadables, the basics of the shaders, and we're going to apply those techniques into a scene like this. I've got these basic models. These are a credit to Dimitri, a good 3D modeler, although he doesn't want it to be credited. It was just some free models. He had like triangulated versions of these, and I cleaned them up and converted them into quads so that I can just quickly do some shader work, some beginner level shader work to come up with some good results. We're not going to do advanced or intermediate level work. We're simply going to utilize what we have in Maya and see what we can get out of it. So in a typical look development, we want to make sure that we set up our scene. So we've got our objects, a simple ground plane, for example, just the basics. In my case, I don't have a background, as in I haven't got some kind of a wall or something. It's okay. I'm just going to rely on the lighting that I'm going to bring in for now. I want to keep it basic. And then the second thing we're going to think about is the scale. The scale is very important because the modern rendering engine like Arnold or RenderMan and many others, they work on something called plausible rendering, and you must have seen or heard PBR and all sorts of things to do with real life scenarios. They focus a lot on energy conservation again, and we have to make sure that our objects are appropriate scale. Their distance, the distance between an object and a light, very important, especially when you start using Arnold's or Maya's own lights, like spotlights or area lights. You have to think like a real life scenario, or if it's a studio environment, for example, you have to think about that the intensity of the light and how that intensity die away, or the exposure die away when the light gets closer or away from the object. So you have to think about stuff like that. And equally, scale in that sense is quite important. We'll also look at the render settings just to make sure that we understand some of it, at least at beginner level. We have to have a shot camera, and also we'll go through the render view to make sure that we understand how this render view, how we can utilize it to do iterative work quickly, because you don't want to render something and wait for an hour and then iterate it again, and you want to keep it simple. So we're going to look into stuff like that. So the first thing is, once you've got your objects in your scene and say you lay them out, you want to make sure the scale is okay. So this is how you determine the scale. First of all, you want to go into your Windows settings and preferences. There you can go to edit, restore to default settings. So this kind of changes your workspace. Is fine. I'm just going to, this is me just keep playing with Maya, and I kind of tend to mess up my workspace, but it's okay. We can just save that, and the other thing before we save it, just check your settings. There it says your working units. Now if you kind of in the European metric system, centimeters is good. I think it's good for a look development simple project. So we understand that we're working with centimeters, so we are aware of that. Then from that point onwards, when we use lights in terms of determining the distance or the size of an object, we know that we're dealing with centimeters. So I'm gonna set that to centimeters and save the file. So what I tend to do, go to a side view, and this is how I do it quickly, holding on to spacebar where the Maya tab, the text is. I can just switch between cameras, or else you can just go back to your layout tools, which is here on the left hand side, or you can simply press spacebar and you can go to other viewports. For instance, somewhere here in the front view, there's something extra here. I'm just gonna, yeah, that's the perspective camera. What I like to do, I can then go to create, measure tools, distance tool. Now this is the kind of the tallest object that I've got in the scene, so what I can do, turning on to snap to grid option, I can just click on a point and then maybe somewhere holding on to shift I want to draw a straight line. That's it. So what it did, it has given me two locators. You can see it. I can, this is like using let me just turn this off. I need to go back and untick the snap to grid option, just be aware of that. So this gives me this tool where I can just pull it up and down to determine the size of my object, and I can select both locators and get my measurement tool close to my object. I'm just going to turn off the grid. Here we go. There I can just check to see how tall the object is. In this case is 68 centimeters. You know, for a candy jar, maybe this is too much. I could just go in and under my assets tab, I've already got a group, for example. I can just scale it down a bit using the one in the middle, the scale box in the middle. Just uniformly I can scale it down, maybe bring it down to roughly 50. It's half a meter. That should be okay. So this is our kind of measurement tool. Once we're done with it, we can delete it or just keep it there in a group, or hide it, or put it into a layer if you wish. But I don't need that right now. So I kind of determine the size. I'm using this object as my reference. I'm gonna turn on the wireframe on shaded in my viewport so I can see the wireframes, and that will be easy. And then we can save our file. Excuse me. So that's that. We've kind of figured out the scale. We roughly are aware of it. The second thing we need to do to create a shot camera, because we want to, when we do iterative study, when we update our shaders, when we play with the shaders, we don't want to keep back and forth in the perspective view trying to get into an angle. It's better to create a shot cam. So we can go to create, cameras, camera. There you will be presented with a camera, something like this. You can increase its icon size, it's not a problem. So you can use the scale tool to increase it, and it's good to name it. You can call it render cam or shot cam. And I use camel casing. Start with uppercase, and the next word starts with uppercase as well. It's either underscores or camel casing. It's better. That's a good practice. And once we got the shot cam, there are two ways of checking to see what this camera sees. You can either have two panels side by side, where you can manually move the camera around and see what happens on the next on the right hand side. That's a good practice, especially when you learn animation. So if I go to panels, layouts, two panes side by side. This is my perspective camera, as you can see, and it's got another perspective camera. Here I can go to panels, perspective, render cam. So now this viewport sees what this camera sees, so I can move it, pull it up and down, pull it back. And also it's good to turn on the film gate and the resolution gate. So this is what's going to be rendered. Anything outside of this frame is not going to be rendered. So what we can do, pull this back a bit. I want to I want to get these objects in front of the candies, and then we can just move it that way. I don't want to have this corner, something like this. That's it. And then we'll save our file. So we sorted out the scale. We're not there with the scene setup yet. The next thing you would want to do is go to your render settings, and this is where you find your render settings. These clapper icons, they are kind of native to Maya. One of them is the render settings, the one with the cog. And it's best always to reset your settings normally. Let me just go back to the beginning. Yeah, I think this is it. And what you want to do under your render settings, the first thing you want to determine is your resolution. So I'm working with full HD, so that's 1920 by 1080. A typical TV, unless you're using a 4K TV. And then we'll scroll down. This is where you determine it's the image size. So we can go to HD, and we'll look for HD 1080. This one. So that's 1920 by 1080. And at the end of your look development project, you are going to do your final render on your shot camera. So it's good maybe to change it at this stage as well. So the renderable camera, this is to do with the final rendering. It's not to do with the iterative rendering that we're going to do till the last moment. But it's good to just keep it safe so that you don't, if you forget, you don't want to render the wrong camera. So pick that camera as well. For now, we can just leave it there, and we'll save our file. You can do iterative saves as well. I just keep doing it because I've got multiple copies anyway. And what you want to do initially is to we're not going to talk about lighting in this tutorial. So what we are going to do, we need a light in our scene just to be able to see our objects, and also to see the effects of the shaders. We're going to use one of the standard lights, which is a Skydome light, and it's an Arnold light. Now, if you installed Maya and somehow you can't see Arnold, it could be because you haven't turned on the plugin itself. So I'm using Maya 2019. Normally when you download it and install Maya, Arnold comes with it. But sometimes, depending on the performance of the computer, I mean, some of this software is quite intelligent. Based on your graphic card's quality or the performance of the computer, it might turn itself off and let you to turn it on. So to find out where Arnold's plugin is, you can go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. This is all the plugin where some of them are off deliberately because Maya lets the users to decide on which one they need. There will be a time where you have some advanced knowledge, and you might want to deal with certain things, and you realize that you don't have the software. Maybe you're following a tutorial, but it's actually one of the plugins that have been turned off. You can just go and find it. So in our case, we've got lots of stuff that is on, but if we go to we're looking for Solid Angle, which is Arnold's parent company. It's this one. So it's the this is the Arnold plugin, mtoa.mll. So you have to make sure it's loaded, and if you want it to be loaded next time, make sure it's auto loaded as well, and just refresh it and then close. So once the plugin is set up, the next thing is to get an HDRI image, and I remember talking about it in the previous session. So it's this one. You can either go to HDRI Haven, and there are other companies, or actually artists that are actually giving some of these for free. So for example, one of them is the HDRI Maps. SIBL Archive has got lots of HDRI images. HDRIlibrary.com, I think it's these guys. So I'm using HDRI Havens. I think that's a good one. I'm just going to put these back. So I'm using an outdoor scene of, I think it's this one, the Palermo sidewalk, and I'm using a 2K version. So these spheres are kind of representation of how your shaders might look like when you use this HDRI image. It's a high dynamic range image. I deliberately don't get into technicality of this because we're not talking about lighting, but to put it simply again, they are photos taken using specialist camera, stitched together and with specialist equipment, and people use a lot of this in VFX and obviously in CGI films as well. So anyway, I think I downloaded the 2K version, and that's 2048 by 2048. So we're gonna bring some of that. So let's click on the Sky Dome. Now we've got that, and then we can go to our, we don't need our shot cam for now. I'm just gonna press spacebar and focus on our perspective, and then we can go to the attribute editor, which is one of these next to that human icon, and for the HDRI we can plug in that HDRI map, sorry, for the color attribute, and we use the checkered box file. And if you've already set your project folder, if you've got a project folder, you normally put your downloaded images or textures or HDRI maps under the source images. And always remember, anything that goes into Maya as a texture or an HDRI map, it's saved under the source images. So whatever you bring in as an image file has to be saved under the source images. Anything that goes out of Maya is always saved under the images. So I'm gonna bring the Palermo sidewalk, it's actually 4K, plug that in. Takes a bit of a time now that we've got that image, and the resolution is 4K, so I think that's 4096. So we've got that. I could have used an indoor one, but I like this one. And what we can do then, we can apply an overall shader just to start with. I'm just selecting everything, holding on to right mouse button, new material, using this new material window. So holding on to right mouse button, assign new material. And there we can click on Arnold, and the shader that we're going to use is standard surface. So I'm just going to call this default base material. We won't need this one because all the rest, you know, step by step we're going to add a new material to our object. This is just a first pass just to make sure what we can see. So I'm just going to change the color a bit. is saturation, just like a clay color or something like that. And then once that's set up, I'm just going to leave everything as is, and then we can open Arnold's render view. This is it. Just want to make sure I can see the scene and the render view. Let me just delete these. This is stuff that I've done. And in the render view, before you do anything, make sure you save your file again. If you press the IPR, which is interactive rendering, so if you click on it, it will convert all the textures that you brought in to an Arnold native texture, which is called TX, and it will render the camera that has been specified here. So in this case, I've got perspective. I want to change it to render camera. That's it. Now normally you wouldn't leave your HDRI visible behind your scene, because normally you would have something there, or a backdrop of some kind, but I don't have that, so I'm just going to stick to what I have, and I'm just going to use that just for the sake of this project. And the reason why we've done the first render, because we want to determine our camera angle. We want to make sure we've got everything right. And our first clay-like material is okay. And then this is it. So you want to stop your render. So the next thing I want to kind of show you is this. You can, when you render something, you don't have to wait. You don't have to render the entire thing when you're doing iterative work. So if you're updating a shader or something, and if you keep playing with it, if you're tweaking some values, there are ways of multiple ways of working fast. So one of them is a crop region. So for example, if I'm going to focus on this object, I can just crop that region using this crop region, and I can just play render, and it will only focus on that area, and your rendering, or at least your IPR, is going to be quick, and you can keep update things. You can also move this box around to check others as well, and you can turn it off. And the other thing is, Arnold's render view is quite strong, so when you click on an object, it selects the object, and it also shows its material in the attribute editor, so you don't have to go back to Maya's viewport to pick your objects. The other cool thing is, if you click on object and then you click on this isolate selected, it only renders that, so that's kind of saves time. So that's quite good. And so that's kind of second thing to do. So crop region is one, isolate select is another one. And the other thing is that if you click on this 1:1 real size, that's kind of, this one, it's still rendering in full HD. This is me just zooming out using the Alt right mouse button, or my the wheel on my mouse, or I can hold on to the wheel and just pan it around. But in any case, it's rendering full HD, because when I click on 1:1, it's real size. But what if I'm iterating something and I'm kind of updating things? I don't want to do it in full HD. I don't want to wait till it's finished. What you can do, you can get Maya to still render in full HD, but give you a test resolution initially, like a preview resolution, and each time you render something, you can say, I want 50% of the scene resolution. So when you do that, it doesn't do full HD, half of it. Or you can say I want to do it 25%. So when you want to see something quickly, you can do that. But obviously, when you finish with your iterative work, you want to make sure, if you want to see it in its full glory, you want to make sure you go back to 100% so you can just see the full thing again. And the other thing is, if you click on this cog icon, you have a snapshot option. So if you click on that, what it does, it grabs the snapshot, and say if you want to click on again, and I'm just going to stop for now. Say if I want to make a change to the direction of the light, or if I want to update my shaders or something, and you render it again, I've changed the direction of the light. And then if you click on another snapshot, what you can do, you can compare both. And obviously this is a quite of an obvious thing because I've changed the direction of the light, but if it was me comparing the effects of the shaders, perhaps, it is quite cool to see that. And what you can do, you can hold on to the right mouse button on one of these snapshots, set one of them as A and the other one as B. What it gives you this middle line where you can just see the difference. Now, because I've changed the direction of the light, it might look a bit silly just for this purpose. It's not just for this purpose, really. It's just when you update shaders, and when you start thinking about quite intricate stuff, this becomes quite important. Okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna clear that one. And then we'll stop our IPR, and I'll save the file.